Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Some People podcast, and today we are joined by a very special guest, Simon.
Hello everybody, and welcome back.
Wow, you can do a better intro than I can.
Not bad.
So anyway, shall we get on with said episode, shall we?
We shall.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. So, Simon, what is your favourite Marvel movie?
I'd say it'd have to be Iron Man 3
Really?
compared to everything else, yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I felt like Iron Man 1 was decent, but it was just kind of introducing us to the character. Iron Man 2 felt like it was just making more details for the character, while 3 was definitely involving more backstory with it.
Well, I gotta say, in my opinion here, and sorry buddy, but Iron Man 3 is trash.
At least it's better than Thor 3.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I guess Marvel can't do anything with the number 3 in it good.
Yeah.
Hey, at least it's better than, well, it's probably not better than Valve. They just refuse to release anything with number 3 in the title.
Yeah, I'd definitely say they would be trying everything they can to try and bring it in.
Oh yeah. Although if I had to rank my movies, well, at the bottom would definitely be 3. I like 2, but I think, I'd have to say the best was the first one. And I guess we'll hand it over to you, James.
As for Iron Man, definitely number 1 was up there for me, and it's sort of like the start of, at least for me, yeah. I know there's some debate around that, whether it is Hulk, the
Incredible Hulk film.
Yeah, with Edward Norton. But definitely, I think just the tone of Iron Man 1 really kicked it off. As for favourite, are we sticking to the MCU, or are we opening it up to like X-Men as well?
We can
definitely do that.
Include the X-Men if we want.
And obviously there's the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies.
Oh yeah, those were good if I remember correctly.
The Andrew Garfield ones.
Yes, for sure. So I'd probably have to go the first Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire.
Yeah.
It was a pretty big one for me when I was a kid.
Yeah, I actually don't mind the third Spider-Man one.
It was pretty good as well.
Yeah, that was actually really nice.
Yeah.
Although they were trying to add too many villains into it.
Yeah.
So I guess they bit off more than they can chew up.
Yeah.
Yeah, trying to stuff a lot into such a short amount of time.
Yeah. One way they could have done it way better is if they slowly introduced the villains in the first 2 movies to try and have them come in for the third.
Interesting.
I think that would have been, an interesting way to go. I think it could have worked a lot better than what they probably tried to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a shame I can't really contribute much because I think I've seen them, but it's such a long time ago, I can't really remember much about them.
Yeah, it's been several years for me since I've watched them.
Not only that, but I was quite young at the time.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've got Iron Man. I think I've got the Spider-Man films on disc.
Yeah.
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 I would say, wasn't Green Goblin in like the second one?
I think Green Goblin was in all 3 of them.
Oh, okay. So that
Sort
shows
of, yeah.
Yeah, how fuzzy my memory is.
Yeah, so from memory, because I rewatched them before they released
No
the
Way
latest.
Home.
Yeah,
Yeah, No Way
Home. From memory, yeah, so like Green Goblin is sort of the main villain
Of the first one.
the first one.
Then we had Dr. Otto Octavius for the second one.
Yeah.
Then for the third and final one, we had Sandman, Venom, Green Goblin.
Yeah, but you weren't too far off with Green Goblin sort of being in all 3 as well, with his son kind of taking up the mantle.
Yeah.
Jinx.
Yeah. Worst Marvel film?
Okay, let's go in the order we went in.
Yeah. For me, the worst Marvel film would have to be Thor Ragnarok. I just feel like they tried way too hard to make it a comedy.
Yep.
And they were just trying to put too many jokes into it.
Interesting.
I guess it'll be my turn now. Yay.
Sure.
So I'm now in the firing line. And I guess that's quite a fitting expression because my at least like would have to be, a relatively new one, Black Widow.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just hard to describe. It's just, I think there's a lot of problems, especially on the fundamental level on that,
Yeah,
that
definitely.
I have issues with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Although I think the biggest killer for me was just kind of the issue of kind of the tone in that. Like, I think if I was to kind of go back through it again and really try and remember a lot of those points and that, I'd be able to kind of, come out with, the points where it's like kind of ruined it for me.
Yeah.
It just shows how much of a bad time I have. It's a hard enough time trying to remember what really happened in the film.
It is a bit forgettable, I think.
Yeah.
It wasn't really a standout, especially, when it was, there was lots of rumours about it for so long and, whether it was going to come out before or after Phase 4.
Yeah.
So, it's a bit of a letdown one, for sure.
So then I guess it would be your turn.
Yeah, I would probably have to agree. Black Widow, probably the worst for me as well. In saying that, definitely, I think with the movies, they've sort of fallen into a bit of a pattern and like a
Yeah.
formula.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas with like the shows that have been coming out with
Like
Falcon
Loki.
and Loki.
WandaVision.
Yeah, WandaVision was really good.
Yeah.
So I think they're sort of finding a new life and a new way of expanding the stories of the characters
Yeah.
a bit better.
Like with the new show Moon Knight.
Yeah, I haven't watched that one yet, but I've heard good things.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm remembering this wrong or not, but I remember I think it was either the early Spider-Man movies or it was Iron Man 1 that kind of revived kind of that hero genre and that.
Yeah,
I think actually it would be more accurate to say Spider-Man did kind of sort of revive it, but then it was Iron Man that was it kind of exploded and took it off in popularity.
Yeah. And now with the more later
Stuff
films,
I think it's actually kind of causing the problem that those early films fixed.
Yeah. And I think DC is starting to follow that kind of pattern where they're definitely having decent films, but they're just not having that same feel as to the early Marvel films.
Oh yeah, it's like DC's not been doing well as of recently in terms of movies.
No.
It's interesting that you kind of bring that up because I know you're not a big fan of DC,
Oh, no, I'm not.
and that's the question. Where you sit when it comes to DC?
Whew. That is a tough question. Definitely with the Christopher Nolan Batman series.
Oh yeah, definitely. That was good.
That was pretty great, I thought.
I think some of the early Batmans were all right. A bit cringy, but I think that's what makes them so enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely the first Batman film where you finally get, Batman and Joker on the big screen was pretty good. A pretty good effort, it was definitely much more kid-friendly, family-friendly sort of film.
I was to say, wasn't it? I'm trying to think who played the Joker back then. Wasn't it Jack Nicholson?
Yes, it was.
And in The Dark Knight, it was Heath Ledger.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
For a second, I thought I had it the other way around.
But yeah, as more of the sort of the later DC films.
Not that crash hot.
No. Like I really liked Man of Steel, but then after that, what was it? Batman vs Superman. That was not great, and the sort of bastardization of Justice League.
Oh yeah,
was
I heard that caused a big old fuss.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we
I'm
also
not sure
had
about
Wonder
the
Woman
recent
films.
Batman one though. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. And we also had the 2 Wonder Woman films that would be tying into it.
Yeah, they weren't bad. I think, like you sort of said, they're sort of falling into that pattern and following Marvel a little bit.
Yeah.
There was the same thing with the Aquaman film as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. What was who played Aquaman? Because I should know his name because I don't. There was some previous works that he was in that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
He played somewhat of a main role in that. I think the Netflix series Frontier, I actually enjoyed that. I'm trying to think. Was it Jason Momoa or something like that?
Yeah, because he's also in Game of Thrones as well.
Really?
Yeah.
That alone is probably going to make me, probably sit down and watch Game of Thrones and that.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's just been forever on my bucket list to watch, along with The Walking Dead and Breaking Bad.
Right.
It's like, my bucket list is that big. It's like, I need several lifetimes and I'd probably only put a small dint in it.
For sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. As for the new Batman film, it's not bad.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, I've seen enough of Batman. So, like, for the Batman side of things, I wasn't too...
You weren't really too fussed about it.
Yeah, but, like, to be able to see the Riddler and
Catwoman
and Penguin be portrayed in that way was really cool.
Oh, yeah, I think wasn't the way Catwoman was portrayed in the older Batman films, didn't that cause a bit of controversy?
Maybe. I think... I know more the choice of actor for Dark Knight Rises with Anne Hathaway caused a bit of a fuss because she's sort of more known for like romantic comedies and musicals and things like that.
Although I think she did a pretty good job if memory serves me right.
Yeah, I didn't mind. And it wasn't like a huge role.
It's kind of support, right?
Yeah. So
definitely.
I didn't mind her in that role. But yeah, definitely like with the Penguin, seeing him less cartoonish and more of a mob boss sort of thing was pretty
Kingpin
cool.
Of things.
Yeah, definitely. And the Riddler, so the way they took it, where he's more this sort of online message board, sort of Reddit.
I like to say.
Yeah, kind of like a Redditor.
I could see the Riddler being at home in like 4chan.
That's basically the way they went with it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty cool.
Didn't they bring out an ARG for it?
Yeah, they did. Or at least some sort of website kind of thing.
I think it was like sort of, an ARG website.
And it gave you a couple of riddles to solve.
Yeah. And they're actually pretty good ones too.
Yeah. And
I think the last one it gave me, I had to think about it quite a bit. And I gotta say, once I came to the answer, it was kind of surprising.
Yeah. And
right.
After completing all of them,
you
kind of get the
a
deleted scene.
Deleted scene, not trailer.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Although I might as well talk about somewhere I'm a bit more familiar with, and it's definitely a set area where I can say DC did a lot better than Marvel, in my opinion, and that is, when it comes to video games, because I just don't see how Marvel could really one-up the Arkham games.
Yes.
I could see them being able to one-up, like, last night, was I think the last game in the Arkham series. I can't remember the name of it. I don't think that it was that, but I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
At least with the others, I either got close to beating or beaten.
Yeah.
I probably, maybe kind of dropped it, maybe almost completing the first act, coming to the second act
Right.
of that last game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I made it to the halfway point of Origins, but due to issues in that, I wasn't just able to complete it, and I wouldn't mind going back and completing it. And I played Arkham a few times, wasn't able to beat it, but this is back when I was young and terrible at video games. Now that I'm older, wiser, and actually got good, I was able to beat Arkham. And I played the loving crap out of City, so you can probably tell which game I like out of the lot.
For sure. Yeah, I've played Arkham and City, and I thought both were really good. But yeah, definitely, I don't know how Marvel could
top that.
Top that, yeah. There was an early Spider-Man game that was, I guess, somewhat of a precursor to what they did with Arkham City, but yeah, it was definitely nowhere near.
Oh yeah, the old Spider-Man game was good.
Yeah.
I haven't played it, but I've seen footage of it, and it looked like it would be a pretty good game to go and visit.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
Yeah. Actually, I'm not sure about if this game ever came out or that, but I remember playing the hell out of this demo for a Hulk game and that. I think you just roamed around this gas station and beat up shit that came to kill you, and then eventually it goes to the cutscene and it's the end of the demo.
Ah, right.
Yeah,
And it's definitely like an early 2000s games, not early, probably early to mid 2000s, just based on the graphics of the, if I can remember correctly. I hope I even still have the file for the demo, the disc the demo was on. That just shows you how far back it was. That was on a demo disc.
Yeah.
Do they even still make those?
I don't think so.
no.
Man, I enjoyed that.
But that does remind me of a more recent game, which was in VR of an Iron Man game. Yeah.
Interesting.
Although, even though I don't have a PlayStation, so I can't say how good the gameplay was. From what I've seen, the Spider-Man games for the newer ones for the PlayStation that seem all right.
Actually, yeah.
I think they could probably match, but I just,
Maybe.
in my opinion, I don't think they can match Arkham City. They can definitely match the other ones, possibly, but definitely
Yeah.
not City.
Right. Yeah, I don't have a PlayStation either, so I haven't played.
Like, if they were to remaster City, I think City would just not only well and truly be able to hold its own against those games, no problem. That's, I think, the only section where Arkham City would fall short compared to that is just the graphics, but that's just because of the age difference.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
definitely.
Yeah.
So give it modern graphics and it'll probably be the best game in existence.
It did win a lot of awards, and obviously it got its Game of the Year version, so you're probably not too far off that assumption.
And probably with the popularity of it, they may remaster it, but I'm not sure if they will. I hope they do.
Probably give it another 10, 15 years maybe.
Yeah.
Just hopefully they don't do something like Rockstar did with the definitive edition trilogy.
Yeah, where
Oh,
they
right.
just remastered like Vice City 4 and one of the others that I can't remember the name of.
Free, Vice City, and San Andreas. I can't believe
Yes.
Yeah.
considering that's not really one of the more well-known titles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My brain just froze up for a second there. But in my opinion, from what I've seen of the footage of the definitive edition, I'd say you're better off just going back and playing the original games.
Yeah, definitely.
Even
Yeah.
if you have to download 50 million mods just to get the thing working, and then I'll even have to tweak the living shit out of it to get it to work. I think it's
Yeah.
just worth all that hassle just because of how bad the definitive edition is.
Yeah.
Not only that, but they were so confident in it doing well that they took the originals off like stores and stuff. And I think due to the backlash, they finally put them back up, which
Yeah, right.
they have. Also, yeah.
Yeah, you're sounding a little bit off.
There we go.
There we go.
So
Seemed to
sorry
have
for
fixed
that technical difficulty there.
Might be a little bit of a
We'll just leave it in.
a drop in audio quality for a moment there, but everything
Yeah.
should be
Yeah,
good
everything should be
Yeah.
back
Now
up
back
and
to your
running.
regular broadcasting.
now. Cool.
So where were we?
Arkham City remaster. Oh,
yeah.
GTA as
Oh, yeah.
well.
Yeah. GTA was where we were
Yes.
leading off with.
Oh yeah, and not only that, but the amount of bugs it had on launch, and I think still had even after a while of just patching in that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I think it still has some major issues, but I'm not sure. Again, I haven't brought it and played it just because of just how bad the press was. And just even seeing the graphics, even when the game's working as intended, it did look that good.
Yeah.
The best way to describe it is if, the old GTA games had a child with Team Fortress 2, and that's the definitive edition in terms of graphics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. That's interesting. I actually wasn't aware that that was a thing.
I'm surprised considering how much mutation the backlash got.
Yeah.
I think at one point there was talks of even a class action lawsuit.
Yeah, wow. Interesting. The it was probably about a year ago, I think a guy did a remaster of the Simpsons Hit and Run game.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a good game.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was
it
a really
was.
good game. And the remaster looked pretty cool.
Yeah.
But be cool if they actually released an official version.
Yeah, an official remastered.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think the company that made it is still around because wasn't it made by THQ, I think.
I would think so.
Oh no, I think they were the publisher.
Maybe.
I'm not sure, but they're
Yeah.
definitely not around, so that could probably cause issues.
Maybe. I guess with Disney owning the rights now.
That's also going to cause
Yeah.
problems.
Yeah, there'd
Yeah.
be something there.
Yeah. I remember the Simpsons actually doing a thing with Marvel where they had the actual Simpson characters playing as some of the Marvel characters.
Yeah, right.
Like Lisa Simpson playing as Thor. I think Bart was playing as Loki.
I think
It's
that
been a
would
while.
actually work really well, Bart being Loki.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
I
My
definitely
question is,
see-
who was Homer?
Have to be the Hulk, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He would definitely have to be like the Hulk or something.
I'm not sure who Marge, what would work for Marge, though.
I think Marge would definitely work best as maybe Natasha Romanoff, perhaps.
I'm not sure.
Maybe, or maybe Wanda.
I think
Yeah.
definitely
Or even
could work as that.
Gamora.
Either that
Yeah,
or
Gamora.
Scarlet Witch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Couple of good options
It's a
there.
name I haven't heard in a long time.
Yeah.
I'm surprised I could even remember it.
But yeah, Homer would definitely have to be Hulk. The fact that he works in a nuclear power plant.
Yeah, wasn't it because of gamma rays and that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a gamma ray experiment that
Yes.
caused the Hulk to happen.
Yeah.
Although, oh man, that brings back some good memories watching what the old X-Men cartoons,
Oh yeah.
like from the 90s, and that the intro music, it's a banger. I haven't heard it in a long time yet. As soon as I started thinking about it, the intro music came straight to my head, and it was like, I started jamming out to it.
For sure. Definitely. Yeah. A lot of those 90s cartoons had some pretty good music.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they were a good period.
Yeah.
I think there was kind of a newer one that came out sometime in the 2000s, and I watched that because, well, I was a young kid and didn't have much to do back then, and
Yeah.
I found it all right. I think it would be nice to kind of go back and not only rewatch the 90s one, but also that one that I watched that was on the air when I was a kid.
Yeah. For sure. I'm pretty sure they have them on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I think they brought out a 1987 X-Men show onto Disney Plus.
Oh,
I,
right.
I haven't watched it yet, but it's definitely on my list.
Yeah. For sure. That'd be pretty interesting.
Although, actually, while we were on talking about the X-Men, your favourite X-Men?
Oof.
Mine would definitely be the Wolverine.
I'd probably have to say Magneto.
Well, that's actually an interesting choice, Magneto.
Yeah.
For me, there's a lot of ones. It's kind of hard to choose. There's a lot of good ones.
It definitely is.
I'm going to have to go for probably a bit of a wild card here, but Gambit. I think that was
Okay.
his
Yeah.
name.
Right. Interesting choice.
I just liked, his powers I found it quite interesting.
Cool. Cool. I think they were meant to introduce Gambit, weren't they? In the in X-Men. And there was some recasting issue or something.
Didn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's kind of move on to something else. So, have you been watching anything interesting lately?
Not really.
I did over the weekend, being Anzac Day on yesterday. Watch the series Gallipoli on Netflix.
I think I remember watching that like a couple of years ago, and it was all right.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. So
And I think I'm not sure if this came out before or on Anzac Day, but I think it was like Close Contact, Long Tan or something like that on Netflix,
oh, okay, yeah,
which would cover the Battle of Long Tan, which I think I've heard a few interesting stories that happened during that battle.
yeah, interesting. What about you? Did you watch anything interesting over the
Well,
weekend?
I'm surprised you didn't bring this up, but there we go.
end
We're
with
back. As I was saying, I'm surprised you didn't bring this up, but I know you've watched this, and I guess you wouldn't find it interesting, but I would. Girls Und Panzer. And I guess I might as well get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, it's pretty decent. I'll tell you that much.
And I think you know where I sit on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
think
I
we
can
all know
sum
where
it up
you
in
sit on
2
that.
words: Panzer War.
Cool. So what's the infatuation that you have with it?
Oh, I think it's just everything is just it's so finely tuned in that it's like there's not really much I can fault with it. Like the only real problem, and this is again feels a bit like kind of nitpicking here, but it does kind of fall on its face when it tries to explain how certain things work in that.
Right.
Especially with the this is a totally safe sport. Yet even though while Yukari is explaining, it's a totally safe sport, it's like it's totally safe because we use live ammunition.
Yeah.
And I think the first time, I think it was the third time I watched it when I realised what she meant by live ammunition. I think people on the other side of the world could have heard me banging my head on or smashing my head into the desk.
Yeah.
Considering that the whole point of live ammunition is to take out another tank, so if it did hit, it would go through, hit an ammo rack, or at least even if it didn't hit an ammo rack, go through and create a tunnel spawn, just kill everyone inside. Yeah, totally safe.
Yeah. So,
Don't forget about the APHE. Once that punches through and detonates inside the tank, everyone's dead. So, totally safe.
Yeah, totally.
Basically, the opposite of D4DJ logic of like everything being actually real and tangible to be able to do, rather than saying that it is, but in reality it can't be done.
You could definitely do it in real life, probably not with live
Same
ammunition.
result. Yeah.
Well, that's if you don't want it to turn into a blood sport.
No.
That would be awesome, though, instead of gladiators. Well, just tanks fighting in the Colosseum instead of gladiators. That would be well, it wouldn't work well because the Colosseum's too small, so it would just be point, shoot, dead.
Yes.
So you'd ever be able to get on target and fire off the shot.
Yeah.
And the shot, hitting something important or just, obliterating the crew.
Yes.
But other than that, there's not really much I can argue with it. I think some of the dialogue can be a bit cringy, but I think that works to its advantage in that. Because I think it just gets that right balance between being comedic and serious and that. But I think what really sells me on it is just that those little details and historical facts. Not only that, but the few references to some movies and that, like, I absolutely I went ballistic once even though it's like probably my dozenth time watching it, noticed a reference to the movie A Bridge Too Far, because I absolutely love that movie.
Right.
Not only that, but it does also make several references to Kelly's Heroes.
Okay. I'm not familiar with
Oh
either.
yeah, you probably wouldn't be familiar with those. Those are a bit old films and that.
Yeah.
But also it's because of their age, they're pretty good because all that would have been done practically.
Yeah.
And I just love good practical effects.
For sure.
Yeah.
Not only that, but even just the attention to historical detail and historical accuracy too. Although in that regards, that's another kind of little gripe I have, is that the tanks can do stuff that if you try to do it in a real tank, you'll run into some problems pretty quick, like, I don't know, drifting. Because that's a good way to either roll your tank over or throw a track.
Yeah.
And then, the tanks having an ability to move a lot faster than they could in real life. Like the Churchills and the Matilda IIs during the practice match between St. Gloriana and Ori were able to keep up with, Ori's team's tanks, even though both the Matilda and the Churchill infantry tanks, so they probably probably going flat out you could keep up with either jogging or maybe just a light run.
Right.
And that's them going flat out, where the stuff that Ori was doing was in the ballpark of easily getting around 30 kilometers an hour. Not that quick, but still a lot faster than than 11, 15 kilometers an hour.
Sure. I guess some creative workarounds to move the story.
It'd be
along
interesting
a bit
to
faster.
see if how the show would play out if it was to be super realistic.
Yes.
But at the same time, I think it would be also boring.
Yeah.
Just simply, or I could just simply refuse to engage.
Yeah.
St. Glorianas and just run away.
Yeah.
And just set up ambushes, and as soon as St. Glorianas is able to bring any force to bear against them, withdraw and just run away again, and keep doing that and just whittling down St. Glorianas' forces.
For sure.
Although it's kind of hard to do considering that what they were fielding were infantry tanks, so they got pretty good armour, and Ori's tanks guns not that great to start out with, besides the Stug 3. I'd say if it was to be really realistic, there's a good chance St. Gloria is going to win. The only time I can see St. Gloria not being able to win is if they don't take out the Stug Free, and the Stug Free's able to get into position and take out that Churchill. That's the biggest threat, is the Mark 7 Churchill.
Right.
Just because there's no way even the Stug could get through its armour at close range frontally, like probably on the sides and that, it could probably hit it and pen it and take it out from a distance. But even then, if the person operating the Churchill is smart enough, they're going to keep their frontal armour towards something like that.
For sure.
Although I guess you can definitely use the Stug Strength, which is low profile, to help hide it and conceal it. And then once that side of the Churchill is exposed, that's when you take your shot and put it down. Mm-hmm. Especially if you were to ambush it, let's say, in a city where it's a tight, narrow road where the Churchill can't actually turn around to bear its frontal plate.
Yeah.
So then even if that first shot doesn't take out the Churchill, you can put more shots into it without it being able to reply.
Yeah.
Although I think it's 75 mil in that kind of situation may have enough power to get through your armour, but as long as you can, even if it takes just putting one round into the turret ring and immobilising the turret, it's now just a sitting duck.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So, and I think that's the way I can see it, is that it doesn't matter if the Stug at that point gets knocked out, because with the Mark 7 out of the way, or the Mark 7 Churchill out of the way, I can see, the playing field being levelled a lot, but the 3-inch plate, which just covers almost the entirety of the Matilda 2s, would still make them a tough nut to crack, but just not as tough as the 6-inch frontal plate on the Mark 7 Churchill.
Right.
Yeah. Some of the guns on some of the authorised tanks at very close range could probably get through the 3-inch plate. But even then, with clever positioning, you can kind of bypass the 3-inch plate anyway.
Right.
Which then kind of, levels the playing field a bit. Because, the armour's not going to give it protection if you're hitting where the armour's not protecting.
Yes. For sure.
Simple as that. So even just using the terrain to your advantage and getting that high ground, because tanks are notorious for not having much armour up top. Yeah. At most, you're probably looking at 20 mil plate compared to a 3-inch plate, which is 76.2 millimeter. Just so a bit of size comparison there.
For sure. Yeah. Quite a big difference.
Not only that, but also the soundtrack's really good. Not only with just, even the ambient soundtrack's really good too, and that's, in my opinion, also helps make me enjoy it and love it so much. Yeah. But even then, in the soundtrack, there's even time period, historical pieces and that, and those and they use that as themes for the certain schools and that, because a lot of the schools are themes are based off certain countries and that, saying Gloriana's from the tanks they feel you can tell they were based off the British. And not only that, their attire represents that, because their battle outfits are quite similar to the British Line Infantry uniform. Not only that, but they have a habit of drinking lots of tea. So how can you get more British than that? Not only that, but also kind of the way that they speak and their mannerisms also kind of align with the British. Yeah. And so there's those little details. And their, I think, theme song would be, the British Grenadiers, which I don't know how you can get a more patriotic British song.
Yes.
I would say you could do that, but then it would feel a bit out of place. Would say "Rule the Waves Britannia," but that would only work if you were the Royal Navy. Yeah. Yeah. And then, although I have to mention, even though I do like Aura Rights, I think it's probably not only competitively the weakest, but in my opinion, the weakest school overall in terms of just being interesting. Not they're interesting because they got a good lineup of different tanks from different places and that, and they're interesting personalities of the people operating the tanks and that. But other than that, it's just there's not really much going for them. Right. Although I do have to mention my favourite school, and probably one of the strongest in terms of competitivity, would be Pravda, which is based on, the good old Soviet Union. And I think, although they had heaps of, there was a lot of Russian pieces and that they used in the show, and I just absolutely love that, because I'm quite familiar with a lot of those old Russian pieces. I think they, at one point, even had the Nutcracker in that, which is yes. Yeah. This perfectly fits, considering it was composed by Peter Ivalich Tchaikovsky. Yes. Wow, my Russian's actually a lot better than I remember it being. Cool. It's a shame they didn't get the 1812 Overtune, though. because I'm not sure how you could get more patriotic than the Soviet theme or the Soviet anthem.
Yeah.
Considering the whole point of that piece was to celebrate the Russian victory against Napoleon during the War of 1812.
Right.
Pretty much, turning the tide
Yeah.
of that war.
Interesting.
Although one of the more interesting songs, and I think what I would say is the theme for Pravda, would be Katusha, even though there's a bit large consensus amongst the fandom that they're not a fan of it.
Right.
Although I've seen it going both for and against it. To be honest, I'm kind of a bit on the fence of it because, the version they have in the show is good, but then on the soundtrack they have a version where they actually have people singing the vocals to it.
Oh, cool.
And it's just weird hearing anime girls singing Katusha.
Yeah.
Although I'm going to say the Red Army Choir does an absolute banger of a job when they have people working on the vocals for it.
Yeah.
But that's because they have a choir, so they've got pretty good voices.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not only that, but it feels a bit more authentic because it's the Red Army Choir, and this was this piece was actually made during the time when Soviets were in power. I think it was like 38, 39.
Right.
Started out as a poem and it turned out to a song, and then became a patriotic song during the Second World War.
Yeah.
You can see I could probably go all day just talking about this, the kind of the history and sort of behind the show and that, a lot of that behind the scenes stuff.
For sure.
Not only that, but they have the best lineup of tanks in my opinion, minus the 34 76s. Although I'm just not a big fan of those. Although they still pose more than enough threat to aura ride. But then they have the 34 85s, the Stalin 2, the KV2, aka the Russian fridge. That thing alone would just be enough to probably just obliterate ORI team. If they can't get in and take it out just because that 6-inch gun, if it can't pen the armour, it's just going to obliterate the armour with several pounds of explosives.
Right.
Or it can punch through the armour and then detonate with those several pounds of explosives inside said tank. So either way, it would do a lot of damage. Even a near-miss with a high explosive round would probably immobilise you, if not probably obliterate you if it's close enough.
For sure.
And that just shows you how... Although due to it having a big, large gun, it's slow to reload. And doesn't help the fact that it's multi-piece ammunition, so you'd have to shove the round into the gun, you'd have to grab the powder charge. In this case, I think it's actually case, so you'd have to grab the case that had the powder and shove that in, lock it up, aim and shoot. Not only that, but it's quite top-heavy, so it's prone to rolling over if you tried to turn the turret on uneven terrain. And also, even if you didn't roll over on uneven terrain, having the turret turned at a weird angle on uneven terrain and firing the recoil would probably roll you over anyway. And not only that, but also the extra weight would make it more prone to breaking down.
For sure.
So you can see, it's really strong if it works.
Yeah.
And it does have a lot of problems, but when you're in those situations where you're in a big flat open ground and the range is opened enough, start lobbing 6-inch shells straight at your enemy, and then there's not really much they can do in terms of returning fire.
For sure. Yeah, it definitely sounds like it would be really good in more of a stationary position.
Better as mobile artillery.
Yeah, yes.
Although, I haven't really mentioned their the ace up their sleeve though.
Right.
And it's because, I might as well save the best tank until last, and that is the Stalin 2. Not only because, it's named after our glorious leader, but it is a serious monster. Out of all the tanks that I've seen and I'm familiar with, this thing, even though it does fall short in some departments, it's just does so well in other departments that it would be very hard to combat it. Don't get me wrong, compared to other heavy tanks, its armour doesn't stack up quite well, but it makes up for that with a gun that has a lot of power behind it and can still deliver lots of powers at considerable ranges. So it could fire at a long range, be able to pen your armour, and probably the range you engage it at, its armour may just be sufficient enough to stop your round. So you can kind of see where it's strongest at. So at close range, all it has to do is point the gun in your direction and you're dead. And at long range, it can still deliver enough power to even get through relatively thick armour.
Right.
I can't remember what range where some of the heavy tanks would start to kind of come immune from its guns, but I know that's pretty far away.
Yeah.
And I think the power of your gun's penetrating power would probably reach levels where it may struggle to penetrate or even be completely defeated by the Stalin 2's armor.
Yeah.
Not only that, but in terms of mobility, it's pretty good for a heavy tank. Not only that, but it's also got the Russian, VT diesel, which are very easy parts to get for that engine because, almost all the Soviet tanks during the war used it. Right. Even some of the older tanks that were still around by the mid to late war period even got the VTs fitted into them, like the BT-7M, which was essentially just a BT-7 with the V2 diesel.
Yeah, right.
Not only that, but they were reliable, and the Russian sets are reliable, or just being easy to fix, if not just straight up easy and quick to replace. Hence the design of the T-34, the whole back end can open up so you can rip out the engine and transmission as a whole with little to no fuss and then drop a new one in and you're good to go on the march again.
Right.
I think the Stalin has a similar thing, but I think it doesn't kind of work as well as, on the 34.
Interesting.
So I think the KB2 itself also had the VT diesel, although it being an earlier tank would probably be an earlier, not as powerful version as seen in the Stalin 2.
Sure.
But you can see, that lineup is just, again, the best way to describe it is almost like a sledgehammer.
Yes.
And I think that works well, especially with the tactics that, Pravda end up employing. It's kind of using that force to kind of, smash their enemy.
Yeah.
And kind of almost being a bit kind of reckless in their approach, which it's a bit of a double-edged sword, but just because of the firepower they have, I think it works more than most, especially if they're going up against a team that doesn't field such heavy hitters.
For sure. So there's Britain and there's
the Soviet Union.
Obviously, there's Germany.
I
would think.
Yeah, Kurumore, I think. I may have butchered the pronunciation, but
sure.
And I think they're kind of tied with Pravda in terms of in terms of being a top contender, and actually in the lore they're like I think won the Tankery tournament 9 years in a row. So that just shows even in the universe they're quite dominant in that.
For sure.
And even looking what they field in their tactics, I can definitely say that I can back that up and say that it's definitely plausible they could have such domination out in the field. Considering, although if it was to be really realistic, there's a good chance that half the tanks will probably be out getting serviced or fixed up.
For sure.
Just because, the tanks they fielded late war, German tanks, then they were notorious for spending more time probably getting worked on than actually fighting.
Right.
Like, I think the German armour strength, reduced to got so low during the late war, only half the tanks they actually had were actually capable of going out and fighting on the field. So that means your division strength was half of what it should be.
Yeah.
At any given moment.
Yeah, right.
So even though these are really good tanks, and you've got quite a few of them, you don't really have many to actually throw and fight the enemy.
Yeah.
But if that was the case, then a lot of the it would make things interesting because there would be a very good chance that most of the tanks would have broken down before the match would even begin.
Right.
And I think they would have had to kind of wave that to the side just so you'd actually have an interesting match.
For sure. Yeah, so make it a perfect universe sort of situation.
Although it's kind of funny because they do have kind of play on the fact that the Porsche Tiger is unreliable by the Porsche Tiger breaking down quite a lot in the show.
Right.
Or being the only tank that breaks down during the show set for the one time Rabbit team blew up, not only through a track, but blew up their engine during a practice match against other members of the RI school.
Right. Yeah.
Just because they got scared, panicked, and tried to run, and since their track was over mud, they gunned it too hard and it dug into the mud, and through the track and the load on the engine just blew the engine.
Yeah, right.
Which immobilised the tank, and that's kind of how the tank gets knocked out. It has to either get a hit that would be considered a knockout for the tank or immobilised. Although I think it's a bit finicky though, because what defines being immobilised to the point where the tank can't continue to fight, because if it hit and completely obliterate the engine, there's no way it's going to continue to fight because the engine's now non-existent. But if it hit the engine, damaged the engine, and immobilised it temporarily, but if you could fix and get the engine working again, wouldn't technically still be able to fight?
I would think so. I guess maybe, putting
because it's definitely been cases where I think I definitely know that getting your track shot off doesn't count as a mobilisation that would get you knocked out of the competition, because there's been plenty of cases where tracks have been knocked off. They can just fix up their track, and they'll be back on fighting. Although I think there's some times where they kind of waive that rule a bit though.
Yeah.
But then in those, you kind of argue that the shell hit did a bit more damage than just take out the track. Like one time I think a hit like that happened that through the track, but it also obliterated the either the idle wheel or the idle sprocket or the drive sprocket.
Right.
I know some tanks kind of sometimes carry spares for those. They only really carry spares for, I think, the road wheels. But so if you lost a drive sprocket or an idle sprocket, you're kind of not going anywhere.
Right.
Unless you're a BT. But
Yeah.
I think in the manga some school fields the BT.
Right.
But in the anime there isn't. But the beauty of the BT tanks is that they can drive without their tracks. Oh, actually, I lied. There is in the movie there is one BT tank, although it's not a BT 5 or 7. It's a BT 42, which was a BT tank that was captured by the Finnish during the Winter War and kind of modified.
Interesting.
And it's kind of funny the mayhem it causes there in the movie. I just recommend just watching the movie alone for just the havoc it gets up to, even though it only has a very brief part in the movie.
Sure.
It's just the mayhem it causes. It's just worth it alone. Although it's a bit unrealistic just being able to rip out the steering wheel, shove it in, and then, you're good to go drive trackless. I think with some of the BTs, you actually have to set it up. But I think with one of the BT7s, it's actually a geared drive, so it should just be able to take off the tracks and good to go. Yeah,
right. That's interesting. And are there any other countries represented?
Oh, actually, I have to go through the tank lineup for Kururamore, because it's just really good. But that's because I have a bit of I used to absolutely love the especially the late World War II German tanks. Like, don't get me wrong, I probably don't love them as much now as I did back then, because I'm looking at them more critically in that.
Sure.
Hell, I didn't really know much about the reliability issues they have, but that's, I think, the biggest stain against a lot of those later war German tanks was just they were kind of plagued with reliability issues.
Yeah.
Well, one, a lot of them were just newer platforms that had teething issues. And two, had shortages of critical material, so they kind of had to either substitute with stuff that wasn't as great, or just kind of had to reduce the amount of material they used, which can also cause issues. And then Germans being Germans, they overbuilt the damn things anyway to make things worse. So the best way to describe their kind of, not only their reliability, but those late war tanks as a whole is that, they're good until they stop working.
Yes.
That's the best way to describe them, because, they're absolutely perfect when they're working in that, but as soon as they start have problems and stop working, well, now they're the world's biggest pain in the ass.
I think that's probably most European cars or equipment in in most forms. Sort of, in its golden era, it definitely is quite good, quite efficient sort of stuff. Whereas, as soon as something goes wrong, it's
I wouldn't be surprised if they had to tow those tanks back to a specialist shop, and then you had to pay a small fortune because, specialist shop.
Yes, it's in the name.
I just realised I just just kind of roasted European manufacturers today when talking about old vehicles.
Yeah, well,
I guess mission complete.
Well, anything can break down if you use it wrongly enough.
Oh yeah, and especially if you don't look after it well enough. But that's where a lot of the good, well-made stuff kind of comes in, because if it's well built, you can flog and abuse the living shit out of it, yet it'll still work like it kind of rolled off the factory line. Well, not quite like that, but it'll actually get you from point A to B, even though it's kind of on its way out.
Yeah, that was like I think Top Gear did it, where they took the
Hilux,
the Hilux, and dropped it from a...
Oh, they did heaps of things to that damn thing, even had it submerged in the ocean.
Yeah.
And even after all that, it still ran and moved under its own power.
Yeah.
It just shows you how tough the cars used to be back in the day.
Yes. Yeah. I'm pretty sure, the last thing they did to it is they dropped it from like 2 or 3 stories high, and the motor still turned over. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, again, it's going to be hard to kind of organize what Kurome feel that I'm going to try and keep it to the anime, which reduces it a lot, but I'm going to try and keep it in the order of going from weakest to strongest, but then at that point it's kind of my opinion.
Sure.
Which, if that's the case, it's kind of hard because they're all around about the same capabilities, some being a bit better than others in some departments. Mm-hmm. Actually, I might as well start off with probably my least liked tank, although I like it a bit more now, but still kind of, it's not up there compared to the other stuff they fielded. And that would be the Panther Tank, which was a late war medium that was supposed to replace the Panzer IV, but that never quite ended up happening. They literally built the Panzer IV a bit before, I think, the Second World War began, during the Second World War, all the way to the end. Even though the Panther started being built and coming into service in 1943, intending to replace it, but it never ever did. They kept building IVs. Yeah. But it made sense because the IVs were smaller, cheaper, and probably about as effective.
For sure.
By late war, probably the not as effective as they used to be, but still effective enough that they could pose a bit of a threat. Right. Although I think the biggest problem with the Panther is that, it was probably one of the more well-known German tanks for being unreliable. Like the final drive was like probably the most most pointed out thing about why people dislike the Panther is that it just went through final drives like oh god, I was going to say that, but then I realised that could probably get cancelled quicker. Let's say fat kids at a McDonald's go through food. Although I think that's a bit of an over-exaggeration. Right.
Yeah.
But again, it's like 100 kilometres of something and then new final drive.
Sure.
Which is the final drive is pretty important because without that you're getting no power to your drive sprocket. Yeah. So that means you probably have to change your drive sprocket more often than you have to top up your fuel tank.
Yeah, right.
Or it's like, time to change the final drive. I don't need to top up on fuel. Not only that, the final drives, even though they're notorious for their poor reliability, can get quite a bit of distance out of them when a well-trained and skilled crew that have been trained to operate them can get quite a lot of distance out of them. It's just, at that point, Germany had a shortage of skilled tankmen. Right. So there would have been a lot of experienced ones that wouldn't know how to kind of treat it in the way that they could get long lives out of the final drives. Yeah. And that's also another problem was that they had highly complicated, highly strained equipment being operated by people that wouldn't know how to operate them in a way to kind of not, shorten the life of the parts.
Yes, for sure.
Hell, even them, they had part shortages, which made things even worse. It was so bad, in fact, that a tank that needed this part to fix and get it back in the field, by the time it got back to the factory to get that part done, all the other parts had been cannibalized to fix the other tanks that needed fixing. So they had to pretty much build the new tank from scratch using the whole of that old tank. Yeah, right. And that just shows you how bad the part situation was in Germany. Yeah. That literally tanks that got sent back to the factory come back needing to be, built as a new tank because all the parts had to be stripped off it.
Crazy.
It didn't help that it didn't quite standardise. Like, almost every new tank got a new engine that was different from the other one. Yeah, right. Like, you had the 108 for the Panzer III early 4s, and then you had the 112 for that, and then you had the 210s for the early Tigers and Panthers, and then the later ones got the 230s. Sure. And then the later ones got even more powerful versions of the 230s, and you can see just how much of a logistic nightmare it would be trying to figure out what tank you got, what engine it needs, and then what configuration that engine is, and then those parts for said engine. And then, once you figure all that out, bring up the people to get the parts and be like, nope, we simply just can't produce enough of them. Yeah. After going through all the headache trying to figure out what you need. For sure. And then be like, here's a tank here that needs to be sent back to the factory and it's got the parts I want. They probably wouldn't mind if we just nicked some parts off it. Yeah. A few days later, it's almost just a carcass of a tank by the time it gets back to the factory. Sure.
Yeah, not a super efficient system.
Although, again, besides all those problems aside, even with those issues, they were still fairly effective. Well, that's until they lost air superiority. But that's the whole point of combined arms, is that one element is not going to be enough to be effective on its own. Hence, the whole point of combined arms is they're using the strengths of different arms and different forces to complement the weaknesses of the other units to form, that really strong army in that. Yeah. Didn't help though. Well, I'm not sure if this was much of an issue between the Luftwaffe and the Wehrmacht, But I know there was a serious rivalry between the Luftwaffe and the Kriegsmarine,
Right.
which actually, that rivalry definitely hurt the war effort.
Interesting.
Because instead of they would compete for resources and kind of keep resources to themselves and deny those said resources to other branches just because... Because even though they didn't really need it, they just didn't want them to get it. Because them actually performing well would mean that they would get more funding and more resources and that, and so they would do it as a way to kind of stunt the other one's growth.
Yeah.
You can see that how that inter-service rivalry hurt the war effort.
Yeah, for sure.
Instead of resources and funding being pulled to stuff that could have helped them, it was getting kind of just sitting there needlessly, not being used.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely not having that synergy between all the different factions. And that sort of internal rivalry.
I just realised we just spent a time just talking about Germany, and I haven't even talked about the tanks. I only mentioned the Panther. I think that just shows you how much I know about when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say my stuff I'm saying here is 100% correct, but it's probably a lot better than a lot of certain channels on TV.
Sure.
Although I probably repeated a lot of that propaganda and that, but I feel like I balanced it out a bit with the, I guess, some more proper knowledge, I guess.
Right.
So I feel like it's a good balance, in my opinion. I guess I should move on to the next tank, although this, I like it, but I also hate it at the exact same time, and that is the Elephant.
Right.
Which is, elephant.
Yes.
It's just, since it's German, it has to be well-pronounced German. Which is, I think the Germans actually pronounce it that way.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's like, it's a good tank when it works.
Sure.
And when it works? I don't know.
Right.
And I think you probably know, I guess you don't know this bit of information, but you can probably figure out why I made that joke.
I'm guessing it doesn't work.
No, because it's related to the Porsche Tiger. And you heard what I talked about when I was talking about its reliability.
For sure.
In the show.
Yeah.
It has the same reliability issues as the Porsche Tiger, but on steroids.
Right.
Couple that with it being underpowered to the point where it even struggles to go up slight hills.
Yeah, okay.
And also having the problem of being not only prone to breaking down and catching on fire like the Porsche Tiger, but also being heavier, meaning it's more prone to doing said thing, and even more prone to getting stuck.
Yeah.
But if you take all those factors out of the way and just look at its specs, it's a pretty good tank destroyer.
Right.
But I think it really gets hurt by that reliability in that.
For sure.
Although its frontal plate, though, is pretty damn thick, about almost 8 inches thick off the top of my head.
Yeah, right.
So by the time it came into service, there would not been that many, if any, gun that could really reliably penetrate its frontal plate. By the later war, you could probably start to see stuff emerge where it could reliably pen it. Although I think its own gun had enough oomph to probably pen it.
Right.
But then again, the problems it had, it just doesn't balance it out.
For sure.
Even the Porsche Tiger's not that great. And the only reason why I'm not talking about it is it's not fielded by Guramore, but it's fielded by Orai.
Right.
Although jokingly, it does have EPS, which I don't think the Porsche Tiger would have, but it does also kind of help the trope of it not being reliable because the EPS is like you're only going to use it a few seconds before the motor burns out.
Right.
And it's hilarious. It's almost like it turns into a bloody Formula 1 car with how quick it accelerates and how fast you can go using it, which I guess balances it out, only being able to use it for a few seconds.
Interesting.
But then also, apparently, there is a VTOL button in it, which...
Right.
All I can say is, the fuck. I think I've seen a meme where someone's like, what happens when the VTOL button's pressed? And it's just hilarious considering it just takes off and flies away, considering that's the whole point of VTOLs, vertical takeoff.
Yeah.
And landing.
Interesting.
Which, that's terrified to think, one, getting such a Porsche Tiger off the ground, and two, hoping it doesn't break down while you're flying. And three, I don't think it's going to be easy to land.
No.
But again, I think we're going to have to speed along because I know we're going a bit over time, but
yes.
I'm going to have to fire through this even though it's like I just want to talk about it so badly.
Speed run.
Oh yeah, so it would also be filling the Tiger 2, which we'll have to talk about that later because we haven't got time, but it again has similar problems to like the Panther, just essentially
Sure.
big nasty tank, but just again a lot of strain and being a bit underpowered.
Yeah.
You can see that trend that Germans tanks, big nasty, tend to be underpowered and unreliable.
Yes.
I forgot. Kuromore feels this, and I don't know why they would have one of these lying around, but this just would be really hard to kill even with having something like that Stalin 2, and that is the mouse,
Right.
which not the largest combat, not the heaviest combat vehicle to have seen combat, because it never really did see combat in history, but definitely the largest land combat vehicle ever built, coming in at like 180, 200 tons. And
Right.
having, armour that on its side that would make the frontal armour of the Churchill look, small in comparison.
Sure.
And having a frontal armour that would pretty much make it almost impervious to all but the heaviest of guns,
Interesting.
or powerfulest of guns.
Yeah.
While also packing one really powerful gun and a second, not as powerful but still quite potent gun. Although it has a trade-off of, being really big, being a really big target, being really slow, and probably not having similar reliability issues to the Porsche Tiger. But again, there's not really much documentation about its reliability, but considering it had a similar powertrain to the Porsche Tiger, but scaled up to move such a big behemoth,
Yeah.
it may have similar issues.
Yeah.
Not
You
only
would
that,
assume.
but one of its biggest problems is due to its large size and heavy weight, it wouldn't be able to cross over a bridge.
Right.
So the best defense against this thing is a river. Because if it tried to go on the bridge, the bridge would give out and just fall into the water.
Yeah.
And this is probably the biggest failing of Kuromore, and that is, since they only have one of them, they can't do what they designed it to do, which they designed it to be able to cross through the water by having the electricity for the one traversing through the water being supplied by the one that's on land, because the way it's set up is that it's driven by electric motors, but it hasn't a gasoline engine that powers a generator, which that generator supplies the electricity to the electric motors.
Right.
So, and it's a bad idea to run a gasoline engine underwater, because it will suck all the oxygen inside the crew compartment and will asphyxiate the crew inside of it and kill them.
Yes.
So they would have one out on the surface running the engine to power supply the electricity to the one travelling through the water.
Interesting.
And then would have a snorkel for the crew to breathe it through,
Yes.
and then it would get across, and then the other would kind of go across. So that would take tons of time, though.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And more than enough time to bring in some aircraft to just blow them up.
Yeah, and you would think, while they're in the water, it'd be a pretty compromising position to be in, I would think.
Although, again, it's probably, just breakthrough tank taken to its extreme. Because that's the whole point, is, being
Sure.
really well protected and having a lot of firepower to be able to smash through lines and that.
Yeah.
While not have to worry about being taken out.
Yeah.
But again, only I think two prototypes were built.
Right.
One with like a mock turret and then one with an actual turret. And I think the one with the actual turret got destroyed, but the other one wasn't. So the Soviets are like, okay, we'll rip the turret off the destroyed hull and put it on the good hull.
Right.
So that means the only one in existence is like what? Version 1.5, because it's got the turret off the version 2, but it's the version 1 hull, if I remember correctly.
Right.
Or it could be the other way around. No, I think version 1 got the mock turret, where the version 2 got the actual turret.
Sure.
So even then, there's maybe not really an actual mouse left in existence for an original one.
Yeah.
Although pretty cool, the one that's still in existence, an original one, because it's made from the parts of the originals.
Yeah, it's not a complete Frankenstein. It's
Although I think hopefully they salvaged the engine out of the version 2, because I think the version 2 had a larger, more potent diesel engine, which would have probably helped its performance just a little bit.
for sure.
Although I think the Soviets tested it and was like, this is kind of a bit impractical. And this is coming from the Soviet Union that made stuff like the KV-2.
For sure.
Which is kind of teetering on the impractical. Like, it can definitely work. Like, as I think it was described by the Soviets, it's like, the KV-2 is a good, they were like, this is a good tank, but it doesn't quite fit the way warfare is now.
Yeah.
because it's kind of the best way to describe it is kind of a mobile bunker buster, but
Sure.
it's just too slow to kind of work well in the more high mobility warfare that was the Second World War.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
But even then, when used as mobile artillery or as a static artillery piece, that's what all it can do really well. But at that point, there's much cheaper and better, more effective methods of achieving that kind of effect.
Yes, for sure.
So, like, you had nothing else to kind of fill that role, and you had a couple of those lying around. Go ahead and use them.
All right.
God damn it, they haven't finished. They have. Oh God, I'm trying to remember. I'm thinking they had the Jagd Panzer IV. I don't think they did. I know that the Jagd Panthers, maybe Jagd. No, I don't think they had Jagd Tigers. Was it Jagd Panther or Jagd Tigers they had? God damn it. For the school that I know a lot of their tanks and history behind those tanks about, like, it's a bit hard to remember their lineup. I know they had Panzer IIs, IIIs, and I think IVs, but I think one only makes a brief appearance in the anime. Well, not in the anime, in the movie.
Yep.
Oh no, there is a Panzer III. It's what Ulrich changes the Panzer III into this street, and that's when they showed the mouse. I guess spoiler alert for you. But imagine that, it's like, oh, we'll just chase this Panzer III's on the way, let's chase it. I'm not surprised anyone realised it was a trap, but I wouldn't be surprised the looks on their faces when they saw something like the mouse just roll out and just block the street that they were coming down, because it was a small street. Yet you probably only took a quarter of the mouse to block off that street, going into that opening. Although, if the enemy was realistic, it probably would have taken a while for it to turn around and bear down on the alright team.
Yeah.
But then I guess they do a good job of really showing, this thing's not to be messed with by actually probably exaggerating the firepower it had.
Sure.
But I think it just did a good effect of showing, this thing is not to be taken lightly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although I got to give all right points for how they were able to take it out, though.
How was that?
If I was to tell you, I don't think you would kind of believe me.
Right.
That's the best way to describe it. So you kind of have to see it for yourself, and that also gives you a reason to watch it.
Yes, for sure.
Let's see what else I can confirm they have. Oh yeah, I can't believe I forgot about that. It's like the beginner's favourite tank, the Tiger 1.
Right.
Which I'll have to admit, at one point was my favourite tank and kind of still is. There's definitely stuff that sort of surpassed it, but it's still got a special place in my heart, the Tiger 1, and I kind of feel sad that I forgot about it. So it's actually probably kind of the pinnacle of design in that. Because there's a reason why it was quite feared. Because it is definitely quite a powerful, potent tank.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, stuff like the Stalin 2 and that kind of, as well as the Tiger 2 kind of surpassed in capabilities, but even at that point, it was still a potent threat. It was something you couldn't take lightly, unlike, let's say, a Panzer II, so to speak.
Sure.
Its gun could definitely still do some serious damage to those larger, more heavily armoured tanks. And its protection wasn't anything to, wasn't be a pushover.
Right.
Because I think it had, a 4-inch frontal plate? Yeah, a little bit thinner than what the Churchills, but for its time would be more than enough.
Yeah.
With even thicker sights than the Panther, so it's at least doing something better than the Panther, so yay. But then it was played with similar problems to the Panther, but that's pretty much like what you're signing up for when it comes to being in a tank in the German army, is that underpowered, unreliability issues, and not a lot of spare parts to go around.
Sure.
So it's kind of like you need to know what you get. Well, you know what you're kind of getting into.
Yeah, definitely.
And I guess I'm going to have to quickly mention the others, and that is Saunders, which is the US. Although, I do have to mention the theme song for Koromore, which I think is Panzer Light, I believe.
Right.
Either that or, I don't want to say the title of that one because I'm pretty sure, I can't remember it 100%, and I'm pretty sure I'll butcher it if I tried to.
Sure.
Those both are pretty well-known and iconic, although my favourite kind of German marching song would be Unser Panzer Division.
Right.
Which I think I listened to a version by it's like some, what was it, like the East German, I don't think it was like choir, but like East German like band or something like that. So definitely a bit more recent of recording, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was like kind of came into existence around that Second World War. I don't know, but it's still a nice name, Unser Panzer Division. I don't know why I went to a French accent at the end there.
Was a little bit. Cool.
Although Sanders is over, I think, either the Field Artillery March or the Battle of the Humble Republic, which they're both good, although I did kind of mistake the Field Artillery March for the Marines.
Right.
Although that's also good itself, and I wish that was kind of, they used that, either swapped out it with the Field Artillery March, because they're kind of similar enough that I was able to make the mistake of
Right.
identifying it as the Marines, even though it wasn't.
Interesting.
Although I do have to mention them, although they only make a very brief appearance in the show, even though there was supposed to be an opponent or I goes against. I guess they skipped over them to get the more interesting ones, but they ended up as an OVA, and that is Anzio. And all I can say is I feel sorry for them, because their tank lineup is probably the worst out of what I've seen. Mm-hmm. Actually, probably second worst. They're probably tied with like Shiatan Academy.
Right.
In terms of, tanks. Although I think Shiatan in Dasan do get some other tanks that aren't Shihars.
Right.
But they're probably about as capable as the Shihars, which are not that great. I wonder if they actually had the upgraded ones, the bigger guns, then they actually have something somewhat decent. Although it had no armour, so if they were going to get hit, they were either going to burst into a ball of flame or just explode.
Sure.
Although I guess there's nothing more than an honourable death, so who needs armour when you can, die an honourable death?
Yes.
I feel like that was a bit stereotyping a bit too hard.
All right. We're going to...
Although, again, the Italian, when it comes to tanks, are a bit of a punching bag. And
Right.
I really can't blame them, because their lineup's kind of not that great. And when they actually start bringing out some decent tanks, it's just like too little too late. Not only that, the entry wasn't that great.
Sure.
And we'll be here for like another year or so if I was to talk about the Italian economy during that time period. Yes. But I got to say, I do love oh god, I don't know if it's third, but I know it's the Carlo Veloce 33s.
Right.
Just cute little tanks.
Okay.
Something I'd like to go probably cruising around on a beach on, but definitely not going to fight a war in. Hell, it's cramped as hell. Mm-hmm. Like I think there's only like a couple inches between you and the other guy in it.
Yeah, right.
That's just how small it is. Not only that, but getting in and out of it would probably not be that fun. Like I think it was so cramped in there that most of the time the commanders would actually when they're not in combat be just riding on top of it.
Sure.
That's just how cramped it was. It was like, oh fuck this, we're not being shot at, we'll just hop out on top.
Yeah, makes sense.
But it's just so cute. I just can't pass it up. Although I think, I guess that covers all of them in the anime and some from the other stuff.
Yeah. Cool.
Although I didn't mean to mention the P40, but we've already kind of gone a bit over time.
Yes.
Although I guess you want to wrap things up, Simon, or do you have anything to talk about?
I don't really have anything to talk about, really.
I feel like you kind of got left behind in that conversation.
Yeah, I just wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
I was zoning out.
I wouldn't be surprised if you sent out a little there too.
A little bit.
I think I may have also fangirled a little too hard in some sections.
Yes. Yeah. All right.
So who's going to end this?
Does it really matter? As long as it ends.
I think nothing else matters at this point.
All right.
God damn it, I had to do a tacky song reference. God damn it.
You want to wrap this one up?
Yeah, this is, what episode is it? Episode 5.
Yes.
I said it at the start of it, so how could I forget? Also, this has been, the some people, can't do it. Jesus. I'm slipping. It has only been 5 episodes. I should be a bit more into this. Okay, this has been the 5th episode of the Some People podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and catch us whenever this comes out or whenever something else comes out, which the schedule's been all over the place. Sorry about that, even though by the time you get this message, the schedule's probably going to have sorted itself out. But,
Probably.
Yeah, considering we were supposed to bring out an episode last week.
Yeah.
And with the time we've gone over, may not even get out the episode that's supposed to come out this week.
Nah, damn public holiday.
Not only that, but also a few other problems that we
Yes.
don't really have time to get into right now.
Yeah.
We may have to get into in like an amending video or something like that, which we
Maybe.
have to make.
All right.
So yeah,
Cool.
that was the Some People podcast, and thanks for listening or watching if you're on something you can watch it on.
And in case we don't catch you, good evening, good afternoon, and good night.
Nice.